General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. Army Europe, is the guest of Spotlight Ukraine. So hello and welcome.
Thank you very much for the privilege.
Thank you for being with us. So, Chief of the Main Intelligence Directorate of the Defense Ministry of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, he believes that the main battles would end till the end of this spring, and the Ukrainian army have all chances, that's the quote, to deoccupy Crimea this summer. Is it just the positive thinking, or those predictions have right to life?
I like how you say that. First of all, nothing gets accomplished if everybody is negative. So it does require positive leadership to see the potential and to see the possibilities. And I absolutely agree that Crimea could be liberated by the end of this summer, by the end of August. But this requires, of course, that the incredible courage of Ukrainian soldiers fighting around Bakhmut and in this area continue to stop the Russian attacks so that Ukrainian forces can build up a new armored force that would be necessary to help isolate Crimea sometime this summer. And then, of course, the West has to deliver what's needed, particularly long-range precision weapons that can help isolate Crimea and then make it untenable for Russian forces. So I'm optimistic. I agree with General Budanov.
Yeah, and do you agree with one of the Ukrainian officials who recently said that maybe Crimea would be deoccupied first, and then we will have the deal with the Donbas region?
Yeah, I think actually, first I agree that Crimea is the priority. That's what we would call decisive, because Ukraine will never be safe or secure, nor will it be able to rebuild its economy as long as Russia occupies Crimea. So Kyiv should not give in to pressure from anybody to give up Crimea. Otherwise, you and I will be talking in 3 years in the next wave of the Russian war against Ukraine. I think that once Crimea has been liberated, then there will be so many changes happening on the Russian side. And I think that the Russian troops and the so-called separatists in the Donbas area will not have much enthusiasm for continuing to fight. So I don't see it as liberate Crimea and then negotiate Donbas. I say liberate Crimea and then Donbas will be liberated.
Yeah, thank you. And now let's talk a bit about Putin. I don't want to, but I have to. Putin continues to intimidate the world with nuclear rhetoric. The other day, he announced that Russia is suspending its participation in the Strategic Arms Treaty. So what is he preparing for, and what next step will he dare to take?
Well, of course, this is just another reminder that Russia is not at least not Russia under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, is not a reliable partner for negotiations. I mean, technically, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an infantry soldier, but technically you cannot suspend on your own participation in a treaty. You're either in the treaty or you're not. And so this is typical Russian activity. You remember, of course, they withdrew from the grain agreement that Turkey had helped orchestrate. And after 2 days, they came back into it. So this is normal. I don't think this portends that they are preparing for something. I think this is just Russia trying to put pressure on the West to cause us to, well, he's trying to exploit the potential cracks inside the West with this kind of nonsense. And I think that he is so desperate that he is trying to he's grasping at straws, we would say, for his own population.
And that's it. Yeah, now let's talk a bit about the weapons. So the United States is discussing with other countries the supply of the 4th and 5th generation of fighter jets to Ukraine. That was stated by Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of the State for Political Affairs. Does it mean that Ukraine will finally get those jets? And how will they change the situation on the battlefield?
Well, I sure hope so. And when Tori Nuland says something, I mean, she speaks with real authority. I remember back in 2015, I think, when she was the one that made it possible for us to provide the Q-36 counterfire radar to Ukrainian forces. So she is a serious person. I trust her judgment. And I think that eventually we'll get there where aircraft are provided. I wish that we could change the policy so that even if the decision is not made yet, let's begin training, because it will take at least 4 months. If you take a Ukrainian pilot who already is very experienced in one aircraft, it probably is about 4 months of training for that officer to become proficient in the new platform. So let's start training, knowing that probably we're going to get to a decision anyway.
Yes, thank you. Politico said that in January, William Burns, the director of CIA, had urged the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, to take as much battlefield headway as quickly as he could, because the scale of military support could start falling off. Is Ukraine capable to start the counteroffensive as quickly as possible?
Well, they will start it as soon as it's possible and feasible. I have been so impressed with the Ukrainian General Staff for the last year with how disciplined they are, how professional they are, and how well they understand the operational level of warfare. And so I think that the General Staff, I don't know this, of course, but this is my assessment. I think that the General Staff recognizes that Russia's offensive, such as it is, which is really only an increase in the number of poorly trained conscripts, will run out of gas or run out of impetus by May. And so in the meanwhile, the General Staff is, I think, building and preparing an armored force that will consist mostly of Ukrainian and captured Russian tanks and BMPs and BTRs and other armored equipment. And then with the addition of Western-provided equipment, I think by June or so, they will be ready to go on the offensive in a strike that is not into Bakhmut, but instead somewhere else that will help isolate Crimea. And I think the General Staff has nerves of steel, and it's important that they are given the ability, that the government allows them to focus their effort on one area. Don't pressure the General Staff to try to attack everywhere. That's what the Russians are doing.
Yeah, 5 directions already.
So you got to focus all your effort on one place where you can penetrate Russian defenses, and that's how they isolate Crimea.
By June. Yeah, I see. The Wall Street Journal says that the United States administration is deciding whether to release its intelligence, according to which China is now weighing the arguments for and against supply of weapons to Russia. So what do you think about this? If China would make this step, so how can it change the situation on the front line?
I think that China is in an interesting sort of position. Clearly, they have warned Russia not to use nuclear weapons. President Xi did that. At the same time, I think they would like to see us fail, us, the United States in particular, but the West. They would like to see us fail. And so they also want to, of course, avoid sanctions. So they're trying to balance all these things. And so I think Secretary Blinken was very clever to publicly say at Munich last week, we know that China is considering giving weapons or giving aid to Russia. So what that does, of course, that puts China on the back foot, just like we did with Russia a year ago, so that China has to deny that they're doing this. I think this is actually a good use of intelligence and a clever way to use information.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this interview. And Slava Ukraini.
Heroam Slava.
General Ben Hodges, the former commander of U.S. Army Europe, was the guest of Spotlight Ukraine, and now we continue. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Latest news, trends, and analytics on all about Ukraine. Like, share, and subscribe. Any questions, proposals, and comments? Contact us via email.